We are live.
Yo,
Haribo.
Haribo, spirit soul.
Haribo, spirit soul. I got
You're
to
up.
still
Yeah,
get this breakfast in me while we do this. I hope everybody doesn't mind. I'm
that's
eating
fine. This is a relaxed show. Honor
some
your
oatmeal.
prasadam while we have our jargon. This is J to the AK with N to the AK. We both got AKs in the middle of our names, mate. This is Krishna consciousness with the homies,
Yeah, we do. Yeah, AK. Yeah, I got an
aka
AK-47 I'm about to drop on everyone. All right,
we got
let's
so
do our
many.
little intro here.
Yeah,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
listen up, everyone. This is the real householders of Krishna consciousness. Let's go. Yeah. This podcast is for anyone who feels like they need like-minded devotees to hang out with. Come and hang out with your bros
Yo, bro. Yo,
while
bro.
we eat breakfast.
Little oatmeal. Little oatmeal for the day.
Yeah, man. That's real.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Bow, bow. So that's our theme tune. Welcome to the real householders of Krishna consciousness. Wherever you're watching this, give us some comments. Last time it went on my Facebook and there were loads of comments and I didn't realize.
I learned. Oh, what's happening here? We got this
So
bad boy loop.
I've got another device to look this time on Facebook. So if anyone is there, I'll look at some comments we can reply to. And obviously, this is actually going out on YouTube as well. So you can watch it on there and subscribe.
Yeah, actually, if you can go to the Real Householders of Krishna Consciousness YouTube channel and subscribe there, if you leave your comments there, it'll come up.
Yeah.
If I learned that because we're broadcasting on your personal page, comments don't come up on the personal page. I learned that from some other stuff I was doing. That's why.
Yeah.
So it's got to come through. Yeah, so you could leave the comments, but we might not see them. But if you go on to the YouTube channel and leave your comments there, then you can definitely, we'll see. We'll
or share this with anyone who is looking for some like-minded devotee association. If this is the kind of thing they're into, we're trying to get real about what it's like to be a devotee who's not necessarily living in the temple and trying to apply Krishna consciousness into your life, being honest about where you're at and living from that authentic place.
So start with that you were talking about. It was really interesting, that phase of Krishna consciousness. What did you call it? Anartha
Nivriti. So yeah, we always, before we start, we begin talking and we're like, we should just start the podcast because we always start saying good stuff.
Our best stuff is always off camera.
Yeah, exactly. But no, basically that's what we're, so part of being real and trying to accept where you're at is really working on your anartas, and most people, devotees, probably know that's a real stage of your progress in Krishna consciousness, anarta nivriti. And it's very important that we make sure we're doing it, because I've been around devotee community for a while now, and I think it's very much our responsibility to make sure, because there's a real temptation to jump over it. You think you're doing it, but really you just start to be all, oh yes, everyone else is suffering but not us, and everyone's in mire except us. Oh, we have this philosophy, and it's like there's a real temptation to now put on this persona, jump over your anartas. But the real work, in order to actually make progress, you have to really work on these anartas, and that can be done in the temple or outside, depends on the person, what's most the best position for them. But definitely, we're representing people, householders and stuff like that, and it really needs to be done, this anarta nivriti, and in whatever way we can. We have to be really honest about where we're at and look internally.
I think the challenge, maybe, I don't know, because I never lived in a temple. I've just spent time like a hang around, like in the biker world, they're called hang arounds.
Yeah, me too.
Like when you're not part of the biker gang, but you get to, you get
invited to I've done that,
right?
Yeah.
So I think the challenge there, like as we talked about, is people feeling comfortable to work on those anartas And I think it's an individual responsibility. Like we just have to know our stuff, whatever we're working on. So like in the Senior Retention Army, we help guys with porn and the
Well,
masturbation
that's what we're
and all
doing in there. That's why I was attracted to it, because I
that.
had issues in that area and wasn't finding any help, to be honest, within the devoted community dealing with those anartas. It seems like there's this thing, like you say, you have to feel comfortable to share it.
Yeah.
First, we have to admit it to yourself, and then there's a real weight lifted when you admit it to others. It actually becomes a lot easier straight after that. But there's a thing, especially within temples, I feel like this thing to appear that you're advanced. So you can't, if someone comes to you and says, oh, I've got these issues, with sex desire, for example, you can't just go, yeah, me too. Last night, boy, I was in the ashram feeling it. It's like, you have to be like,
check out that new video they just posted up.
that's what I mean. You can't do it. You have to be like, oh, yes, Prabhu. Well, this is, of course, just the mind. And Bhagavatam says, like, it's all this stuff, which is like, yeah, but I've got this anartha. I need to directly address it. Like, how do I? And it's like, well, just keep chanting. This is your karma and all of that. And it's like, because we want to appear advanced, it's very rare that someone said, either I have got this or I did have this, so then it becomes like almost this prestige thing where people are, and we start to pretend. But it actually feels so good when you just admit like what's going on for you and just own it. No one can then judge you. No one can use it on you. No one, because it doesn't have any power once you say, yep, I've got this thing and I'm working on it. It's like, who can disrespect that?
Yeah, you know what? And there was actually a member of the army who had said to me, because he was just saying like, thank you so much for, putting this thing together and such. And he said that actually he's like, like the devotees to say, well, you need to just chant Hare Krishna more. He's like, that's his thoughts around that were like, well, not really, because he's like for example, let's say it's a material thing, so it's sometimes there's a material skill that's required. So he's like, imagine like someone said, oh, I want to go get my driver's license, and
just chant Hare Krishna, you'll pass.
Just chant Hare Krishna, just and God from within will provide you the lessons there to be able to drive the vehicle, right? He's like, it doesn't work that way, because he's like, so the idea that like, oh, just chant Hare Krishna and you'll get your sex energy under control. It's like, no, you might be able to, for sure. But so far, for a lot of men, that's not the experience that they have.
The thing is, we know that chanting is purifying us on the deepest level. So it's not to say that chanting is not working. That would be a grave mistake to think that we are all here because of the chanting has awakened our consciousness, and we should continue as much as we can to do that. But I think you have to chant on a very pure level, like to just chant and everything just goes away. So maybe for some people that's working. Who knows what's in someone's heart? Maybe there's some guys in the temple, they're just chanting and they're really anartas are clearing, and some aren't. Like and outside it's the same. Some of us are, some of us aren't. We have to be really, really honest. But for a lot of us, we're trying our best to chant. It's not that attentive. We're trying to get better at it. We still have all these issues. There may be, as you say, some kind of tool that helps us, and Prabhupada said whatever's favorable, use it. So like there may be some other things, like we have the Semen Retention Army, for example. I just found these tools really helpful, and honestly within 6 weeks I learned all the tools I need to be able to control my sexual urges and redirect them into my spiritual life. Whereas for about 7 years in the devotee community, I didn't find any tools to do that. I'm just sitting there trying to chant, and it's getting worse, the desires, and I'm going crazy and feeling more perverted, and all it took was a few tools that you could say, well, that's a materialistic thing, but no, it's not, because it's favorable. It's helping on the ladder for your spiritual life.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, because it's like, I think that there's a lot of, and this happens in any, whether it's the army or whatever, it doesn't matter. This happens in so many areas of life, where we really don't know anything about the subject or what it is, but we draw a conclusion or a judgment on it, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, be like, oh, the Semen Retention Army, that's obviously a bad thing, right? They're promoting sex.
Yes.
Without any context or depth of knowledge about actually the very practices were literally designed for this exact situation. Like, it was like the Taoist monks were like literally sitting around going, yeah, but a lot of men aren't going to be able to do this. They'll have wives. So what are we can do for them? Well, then they created all these disciplines and practices and stuff and energy work to help men in household life to be able to then reach. So to me, that's the funny, and I see it all the time. You know, being involved with politics, I see it all the time. It's like there's what's actually going on, and then there's like conclusions that, and we all do this is to catch ourselves, right? To be like, how do we make conclusions about things we know nothing about, really? And
Yeah,
I think we do that with each
we
other
all
too.
do that. Yeah.
We do that with each other. So listen, I titled this one "How to Get to the Front of the Line." How to, you know, because what we
I'll
want
tell
to
you.
do is what we believe here strongly, very strongly, is that whoever's at the front of the line at Sunday Feast is definitely the most holiest.
Oh
There's, yeah, if you're at the back of the line and you're getting just a little less, you know, whatever's left, that's the worst prashad to get.
But there's different kinds of people. You see, there's some people they thrive on being at the front of the line, and there's some people thrive being at the back because I'm the most humble. I'm at the back. You know, have you ever said to a devotee, "Hey, how are you today?" And they say, "I'm the worst. I'm the worm in the stool. I'm the straw. I'm the straw on the street. But by Krishna's grace, I'm still around." And it's like, yeah, right. You could have just said, "I'm fine, thanks," like everyone else, because it's the same. It's the same as being like, "I'm the best. I'm the worst." It's like a very strange, like it's not a very personal response. But I'll tell you how to get to the front of the line in reality. Like, wear saffron. Like I've seen it happen so many times. We could be at Rath Yatra Festival in London, 10,000 people, a queue. It's going to take you probably at least an hour to get your food. Some devotees come off the Harinam in saffron, they just walk to the front of the line through everyone and going, "Hey everyone, hey," get their food and walk off. And it's like, that's okay, is it? Like it's madness, you know, like this kind of status thing.
Special treatment, right?
Oh yeah, we just did the Harinam, so, and we're in saffron, we're the advanced, so we should take the food. We shouldn't stay in the queue with everyone else. I'm a bit the opposite, not as far as that person who's always saying I'm the worst, but I'm like, even if someone says, "Do you want to go to the front of the queue?" I'm like, no, I'm staying in this queue with everyone else. Why should I, you know, like, wait an hour, so what? Like, well, you know, why are you so important that you can't wait an hour for your prasad and you got to be off doing your important things or whatever? It's like,
that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that's just life too, right? Like a little bit. Like, I guess see that happens in like I'm thinking like a club outside a club, and then there's like the VIPs will come and they'll go to
that's
the front
exactly
of the
what
line,
it's like.
and then they go into the club for everybody else standing out in the freezing rain, you know. But then the VIPs come and they go right into the front of the club. So I'm like, so in a way, it's a little bit like that, right? So maybe it's no different than just the world. Like I just, again, I think it's just like it's just humans probably just doing human things, right?
I notice it so much.
Being it's such a devotee thing. It's like it just seems like it's just human behavior, right?
Oh, our consciousness carries over. Just because we're suddenly doing this spiritual practice in this movement doesn't mean that we're suddenly completely different people. You know, our consciousness carries over. There's certain status things within our movement, and also vanity carries over and can mimic anything. So you can be vain as a materialist and it's obvious. You can be a spiritualist and still be very vain. It's just mimicking a different thing. Oh, Hare Krishna, I'm a Hare Krishna. And you can still be vain. So like, that's why we have to really check those anarthas, you know, personally to see, am I being humble or am I being more vain? Just like this, you know, because it can mimic anything. It's very subtle. That's how like tricky and subtle Maya is. And our tendencies just carry over. So yeah, you can see it's like the same. It's like the same as a club.
Yeah. Do you ever get to a point where you're just like, I don't care. I don't
about
like.
What?
I just like about any of those things. Like I don't like. I just like meaning like. How do I say this? Like when I say like I to the point where you're like just like I don't care like whether you're advanced or not. I don't care whether you're a devotee or not. Or I it doesn't like you. I don't care whether you're wearing saffron or not. It just doesn't care. Like I just don't care. Like and I'm not trying to say that I don't care like in a way of like apathy. And I guess it is a little apathetic. No. Like it's like, but it's just like it just doesn't faze me. It's just okay, cool. You're wearing saffron. You're not wearing saffron. You're wearing the dhoti or you're not wearing the like. Does it get to a point where you ever just feel like I just don't really care. I
I
don't
I
care
definitely
that
feel
you're
like
doing
that.
those things. Yeah.
I'd rather it felt real. And honestly, sometimes I'd rather know, we were talking about this before as well, I'd rather know someone's real struggles, you know, like, because sometimes there's people in position of authority or some status or something, and if you said to them, oh, what are your struggles, they're unlikely to share them, because as we said earlier, it makes them look less advanced. But I actually would find them more advanced if they said, this is my struggles, like, because you become more real to me. Like, it might sound crazy, but even with a guru, like, I'd like to hear what actually is going on for them as a human as well, for me to be able to possibly like relate to them more. And we also do this, we put people in positions of status, and then we gossip about them. If we hear one mistake, you know, we have many people, don't we, in our movement of authority, or whether they're gurus or just people that we really respect highly, and then we do the same thing as they do in the material world. If we hear they make a mistake, we try and bring them down. It's like the cancel culture. It's like, so
Mm.
it reflects into here, you know, the materialistic consciousness. We don't value what they do, what they bring, who they are. It's all about, oh, they have this position, and therefore, you know, that we try and bring them down from their position, rather than just trying to see, oh, they're an actual person. So I
Yeah.
just would prefer it to be real. I would prefer if you could ask these people, what are your struggles, and they'd honestly tell you. I'd literally be more likely to take mentorship or initiation from that person, knowing, oh, right, yeah, yeah, you actually have struggles as well, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I know I've asked my guru became a monk in his early 20s, and so I asked him some things about like semen retention, the sex stuff, and he was honest. He said like because he was a monk from such an early age, right? You know, but that's why I do like the gurus that are married. For me personally, right? Like I like listening to them because
Mm,
I have some relatability to their life,
yeah,
right? To be like, oh, okay, how did you, manage those type of things? And I think that there's always, at least for myself, I like teachers learning from someone. I put in the context of business, for example.
mm,
If I want to know how to make a lot of money, I want to know that I'm learning from someone who's made a lot of money,
mm-hmm,
right? Like, it's not someone who's just read the book about making
yeah,
money and then regurgitating well, the book says that you do one, two, three, and then that's how it goes, right?
yeah,
But it's like someone who's actually done it, and okay, they've had this struggle, they've overcome it, or they're still dealing with it, or whatever it is, that they have a relationship with it. I just think there's an experience there that that makes it again relatable. And honestly, as a teacher, like I know I don't like to teach things that I don't have a personal experience with. So I could
yeah,
talk about many things, but when it comes to like teaching something, like, okay, I'm putting together a program and I'm going to teach this, it's like I'll only do that because I have a personal experience with it. So I'm like, I'm
yeah.
going to teach
Otherwise,
you how to do this because I know how to do it myself. If
it
not, I
won't.
feel like,
No,
yeah,
it's
I've read the
cheating.
books.
Actually,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I've
cheating
read
if
it,
you.
but I don't really know because there's a difference between believing and knowing,
Yeah,
right?
because
And
it's realized. You shouldn't preach above your realization. Like, it never carries. The energy
right.
doesn't carry. People can tell. You know, that's
Mhm.
one advice I was given. As by Bhuta Bhavna, actually. I just said, any advice for giving talks? He was like, don't preach above your realization. Like, that was the only advice. It's like,
Well,
cool.
don't preach above your realization. It makes sense because I think, like, again, there's a difference. There's a distinction between I believe in something and I know it. And
Yeah.
I think that anytime people get into, well, it's funny. Myself and my wife were talking a little bit about this, the same idea over the weekend of like, okay, so when someone new joins into any religious setting, I've seen it in other religious settings as well, they become like extremely like fanatical, like you said, about it, not always, but that tendency could be there, right, to become
Yeah.
extremely fanatical about it, and all of a sudden they become unrelatable, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, hey, what's up, man, how was your weekend? And all you're doing, I'm the worst, Prabhu, and you're like, man, I was just asking how your weekend was, not like your whole confession,
I was like that to my friends, and I can read like journals I wrote. I read one the other day, a journal I wrote, and it was all like, I just joined, and it was so funny. The journal was just like, so grateful for the association of devotees and this shelter I found, and I finally found who I am and being myself, and like with this stuff. And I was like, wow, you are like really new. Like,
That's funny. Yeah, I did the same thing too. I think it's like, again, because you and I imagine it comes from a place like this. What myself, and my wife were talking about over the weekend, that it comes from a place of like, we're trying to find ourselves, right? Like if I just reflect on myself, right, and go, you're trying to find yourself. You're asking the bigger questions of life, maybe, right? Like, who am I? What is this all about? So then you come to a place, and it's got tremendous philosophy, and it's got answers, right? Here's who you are, right? Like, and
that
there's
is a
no
big
question,
deal.
right?
You like
Here's who you
awaken.
are, and you're just like, whoa, like I found it, right? Like I found it. And then so then you just kind of eat it up and dive right into it, and everything is there, which is cool. But it's like, but at the same time, a lot of it is still surface. You
Yeah,
haven't
and it's
really
how.
found
Yeah,
it. Like you kind of,
yeah.
maybe you're in the right ballpark.
You like the idea of it,
You
but
like
it's
the
still like,
idea
how
of
do
it.
I practically integrate this into my life? That's
Yeah.
when the confusion comes.
Yeah, and you haven't necessarily realized it fully, because it's like at first it's like, oh yes, obviously I'm fully surrendered. Take me,
Yeah.
Krishna,
So
do
you're not.
whatever you want with me. But then it's like, but then as a bit of time goes on, all your anartas will be there,
Yeah.
all your stuff will be there, and they'll start to come up, and then you might start to be like, well, yeah, I do like this. But then you start to meet devotees, and you recognize that a lot of them are still struggling with stuff too. So it's like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's just as to what is. Okay. So it's like the answers are here, but the answers aren't necessarily realized.
So not only are we preaching above our realization, we live above our realization. That's a very
Yeah.
weird position. You get very caught in between like that. It's like, I was speaking to a devotee the other day, and they were sharing something difficult they'd been going through, and I could tell that the tendency was to jump over it the way they were talking. So then I just said, how are you feeling? Like,
Yeah.
how are you feeling? And they said something like, which is quite common, you hear, they said, if it wasn't for the association of devotees and guru, I don't know how I'd be feeling. Like, so it's basically, you have something difficult come up, some anartha or some experience, and because it's difficult, you just say surrender, surrender. We have this drummed into us, just surrender, just surrender. But the problem is, in order to let something go, you first have to hold it.
Right.
This is a normal thing. So with the feeling, you have to hold it and then let it go. So of course, the association of devotees and guru can help us to do that if we're processing what's going on. But if we're just like, I've got something difficult, and life was so difficult before I came here, it shouldn't be difficult anymore, I'm just going to jump over it and try and surrender more. Unfortunately, we don't usually work through that thing, and we may stay in the temple for years and years, come out, and the exact same thing is still there, the same issue, because we haven't. You have to
Because you
hold
haven't
it
actually
first
dealt
to let
with
it
it.
go.
Right. And
Yeah,
I think
so
that's
it's
the
an
big
excuse to
kicker.
jump over, and it's very subtle. Like, are we working on the anatta, or are we just using all this stuff as another way to avoid it, like we were before? Everyone has to be honest with themselves about that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, that's like kind of the idea that to me, that's just humans doing what humans do, because I think
Yeah,
about it as a coach, like for example, when I'm coaching guys, either it's sexual alchemy stuff and semen retention and stuff, or like, let's say, business coaching. I see it all the time where it's a there's a part of the formula that's quite difficult
yeah,
for an individual, right? Like in sales, as an example, to make an easy example, the most difficult part of selling is eventually you have to just get on the calls and talk to people, and
yeah,
then ask them if they wanted pie, right? Like,
yeah,
that's there's no getting around that piece. And so what happens is a lot of people are uncomfortable because internally they're uncomfortable with rejection,
hmm,
right? They take rejection very personally, and blah 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 blah, which is like more of a self-esteem issue than it is a sales issue, right? But that's largely like, the challenge. And so I see it all the time, though. It's like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this. I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing the one thing that
yeah,
will make actually the biggest difference, which is, are you getting on calls with people and asking them if they would like to sign up? Like, if you haven't heard 10 no's
yeah,
this week, you're not going to hear the yes. You're not going to hear the, you're right. Like the reality of sales is that you will hear more no's than yeses. And you have to be okay with that. Like most of your day is going to be heard, no, 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 I don't have money. I don't, like, that's just the reality of it. And then out of every 10, 2 to 3 guys are going to be like, yes, I'm in. Yes, I'm ready to get started. Da, 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 da. But so you could be like, yeah, no, I'm working on my business plan, and I've got all the best graphics, and I've got this, that. So you have everything except the one thing that will actually make the biggest difference, because there's a part of that makes you so uncomfortable that you're still not ready to deal with that. That's kind of how I relate to this conversation.
No,
right? It's just like,
we do it in so many ways.
I'm offering the prashad, and I'm waving my incense around, and I go to I'm at the front of the line for prashad, or I'm at the back of the line, or the middle of the line, whichever one makes me feel the best, right? And I'm here and I'm there, and I've got all the paraphernalia. You know, I've got the latest deities already on back order, right, type of thing. But I still go home and jerk off to porn.
Yeah.
Right. Or I whatever, you know, at the end of the day, I still go home and do whatever.
Or whatever issues we have. It's like human beings.
Issue it is. So it's like, okay, but are you dealing with that? Right. That's kind of what you're saying. Like, are you dealing with that? Because that's the thing that'll make the biggest jump or difference.
That's the thing that's in the way of you progressing in your Krishna consciousness. So if we are sincere, we should face the most uncomfortable, difficult thing. And even as you said, there's a point where it's almost you become comfortable being uncomfortable, like with some of this stuff. You have to get to that point.
Yeah.
It's not that, oh, you come to Krishna consciousness and everything will just be fine now and not uncomfortable. Imagine the process we have to go through to change over our consciousness from millions of lives. It must be very uncomfortable, but we are human, and human beings will go to great lengths to avoid uncomfortable feelings. It's very strong urge to do that, and we don't even realize we're doing it. We may think, yeah, we've got everything sorted now, but really it's just another elaborate plan to avoid our uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah. What do they call it? Spiritual escapism.
Bypassing, I think.
Spiritual bypassing, where we bypass the real problems. The challenge, I guess, with that is that, again, it comes back to how comfortable we feel. Also, what's our initial motivation, right? Like, if we came because our friends are there, then probably our motivation to go through those uncomfortable times, dealing with our anartas, dealing with our vices, dealing with our, you know, our shitty characters or whatever it is that we've got, right? That will probably be really tough, because we never really originally came for that anyways.
Yeah.
Right. And like, if we came for the good prashad, like I see it with like, oh, I came for the prashad, I didn't come for purification, right? Like, or it's like, well, the prashad will purify me, you know, type of thing. So I don't need to deal with the fact that
that's
I'm
another one, yeah,
angry or frustrated, or that I'm still like, you know, obsessed with something or the other. You know, I think that's very difficult, right? Like, we kind of use these tools and said, well, it's almost like non-responsibility in it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the prashad will purify me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no.
And then so we just get fat eating loads of prasadam, thinking that's purifying.
You just get fat instead. Yeah.
Instead of working on that thing, I'll just have another cake. That's the same. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, it's I can't remember what I was gonna say, but
I don't know. But it's good. It's a good conversation, I think, to reflect on, because the idea is that, at least what I'm taking away from it is that don't spiritually bypass, basically.
Yeah,
don't bypass.
Because this,
like,
we have so
don't bypass. Just go through.
It's hard.
What you have to go through, right? Deal with the crap you have to deal with and clean it up.
Take responsibility. We have so much subtle conditioning that we might not even realize we're doing it. Like, yeah, maybe we were avoiding stuff and we still are, or maybe subtly we didn't realize it, but we've come to this movement for a little bit of status. Maybe we didn't have much before, and this suddenly we get status by wearing the right things, by saying the right things, and you can't be seen to be actually doing that work or admitting you've got those issues, because suddenly you're in this position of being some pure person, you know, that everyone is looking to. So you get caught in this kind of persona and can't even admit to yourself anymore.
Of us get caught into that stuff because we're also a little bit like so we're like encouraged to, like, for instance, encouraged to advance, right? Like, okay, so um you're encouraged to like, okay, now read the books and go, like, almost like a school, right? You're encouraged to go to
Yeah,
step 2 and
just
step
yeah.
3 and step 4. And so you're kind of going through it, and you're like, oh well, I want to advance, but at the same time, it's like, I wonder how many people just take on things that they don't really want to take on. Initially,
I
they
know
don't really
people.
even really wanted to do it, but it's kind of like, oh well, I guess that's the next step. And again, to me, that's just life. Like, how many people, for instance, are working jobs that they hate, but they're like, well,
But yeah,
that's
but
the
they had
next
this
step,
job, so
right?
they also
Mom
think
wanted
this.
me to be an accountant, so I'm an
Yeah, or
accountant
my
now.
friend, this means something. They hang out at the bar and say like, yeah, I'm a estate agent, or whatever they do,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
that gives me something, but deep inside they know that it doesn't. I know people who get initiated just so other people will take them more seriously, because that's a reality that in the movement you get taken more seriously if you're initiated. Oh, and of course these things do prove you're serious if you're getting initiated and chanting 60 rounds and stuff like that. But there's a certain
yeah. Sure, I know what you
like
mean, though.
standard that, oh, now he's a real devotee because he's doing that, whereas you never know, there could be someone who's very very real but hasn't taken those steps yet, and there could be some people who have taken and they're not being so real with us. But there's definitely these, like in the material world, oh, they've done that, so therefore, oh, they're they're a serious person or whatever. So I know people are doing that. They're literally getting initiated just so people will respect them more in the
Yeah.
community. So it's not
Yeah,
really
yeah,
the
no,
reason.
yeah, it makes sense, right? Like, I think, again, that's to me just a very human thing. Like, um, I can't think about how many things that I've done in my life, like, where I'm like, well, why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it because, all my buddies are doing it, or I'm doing it because that's, what society told you need to do, right? You need to go to school, go get a college education or something, and then go get a job and then get married and have a couple kids, right? Like, it's kind of like, that's what society, that's what you
Yeah.
do. And then there's some people like, yeah, but that just, it's not really in my heart, right? Like, to do that, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, me, I don't have kids. I never wanted kids. I still don't want kids. And it's funny though, when it's like, some people are like, so are you guys gonna have a family now, right? And I'm like, no, like, no, no. Like, we are a family. We consider ourselves, right? We are a family. I have a family. It's like when people are like, "Oh, are you gonna have a family now?" I'm like, "I do have a
Yeah.
family, and I
Yeah.
love them very much." Yeah, it's like, but, right? It's like, but you don't want kids, Prabhu? No, I don't want kids. Yeah, no, I've never wanted kids, and I'm not gonna have kids just because all of a sudden somebody says, "Well, you should have kids," right? Like, because
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, well, no, I'm not, because that's like, it's like not in my heart. Like, there's nothing in me that's driving me to have kids, right?
Mm.
So I'm like, why am I gonna do that? Just like I have no interest in being a priest or anything within the movement, right? Like, I just don't have an interest in that, right? I'm like, so I'm not going to do it just because it's the next step. Then maybe just
Yeah.
the next step isn't for me. And where I'm at will be where I'm at. And maybe in the next life, I don't know. I think there's a real fine line between, like, trying to please your guru or trying to please the community, and then holding to what's good for you, or true, maybe not even good for you, but true for you, or I don't know what word to use, but it's like, where are you at, right?
But
And
you can,
honoring that.
I think you can do better service from that authentic position. That's the thing.
Hmm.
So if the idea is how can I be more service, if you're doing stuff that just isn't right for you, and causing you stress, or you're better off doing the thing that where you're well situated, because you would just be able to be more authentic and do better service. And I was just thinking, when you're talking about family there, I was connecting it back to the Anarta stuff, because a lot of like what we do in the Semen Retention Army is really helping a lot of families, man, like and marriages, really, because there's a lot of, if you're not working on your Anartas, it comes out so badly in family life, like,
Oh my
and
goodness.
sometimes that's not really talked about much, certainly in the area of sex. And yeah, it's just so nice to see in the program there's so many devotees in there who are married, and like this kind of thing is like really saving and helping their marriage, because we know the divorce rate is pretty high within ISKCON, and it's just great to address these things directly. And so, yeah, doing that work really can help you personally, your family, therefore the society as a whole, and of course your service to Krishna can be better. And if that's the goal, then why shouldn't we work on these things that are in the way?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, our divorce rate within the devotee community is worse than the non-devotee community, right? So that should really, like, to me, against the elephant in the elephant in
Yeah,
the temple,
because we always say
right?
they're in Maya and not us. Like, well,
Yeah,
maybe saying that is Maya because
yeah.
look at us.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's exactly. I'm like, but I don't see any, and I see all the same problems that the humans, again, because I don't think that there's a real distinction, and generally between devotees and non-devotees, like, other than a little bit of, like, obviously, that's not true for everybody, but overall, we're all just human.
We're
Like,
just very
everybody's a
fortunate to have
human
this
being.
philosophy. We're just like
Yeah,
some lost humans who are so fortunate to find this philosophy that at least has the way out. But it
yeah.
doesn't mean we're doing it.
But doesn't mean, yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean doesn't mean that we're definitely perfect in it. In fact, I would say the opposite is true. 99.9% of us are not perfect in it. I'm certainly not. And I think that's the thing. It's just getting to that point where, like, where, at least for myself, I just didn't want to pretend anymore, or, like,
Yeah,
put on, like, the show, or, oh,
yeah,
okay, or it's like, you behave a certain way and you are who you are, and then guru comes around, and then all of a sudden everybody changes, and it's like
yeah,
they talk different now, and all of a sudden they're like, they
yeah.
press their clothes or whatever. All of a
The
sudden it's like,
temple's a completely different place when the gurus come around, completely different.
I
Like,
noticed that. Yeah, I didn't realize that when I first came, but then after a while, then I was like, oh, okay, this is just like a show, right? It's like, oh, gurus around, everybody. I remember one time actually, I was this is before I was initiated or anything like that, but I was sitting there with Swami, and saying that, yeah, drugs isn't really an issue, like, within the community, like, and as he was talking, there was a couple of young guys, like, just right behind him, like, and we were all listening, right? And I could tell in their faces that they were like kind of like almost like, oh yeah, he has no idea we're all probably smoking joints, we're probably high right now. Right. And because I caught their eyes, and you know how you have that just exchange where you just, like, right? And yeah, he's like, yeah, I don't think, like, drugs is really the issue, but it's more like people finding relationships and stuff, that type of thing. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, interesting. But I kind of caught the vibe as I was talking to other devotees without the guru being there. I was like, oh no, but people here are smoking joints and doing all
I
that kind
mean,
of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But again, when guru comes around, it's like, no, no, no. I mean, no, everybody's pure,
and
right? Everybody's just living it up.
and they don't
It's
like
like, no, that's
anyone
not true.
pointing that out. They don't like anyone pointing that out because it's like a facade. We're all arguing and so much politics, and then when the guru comes, it's like it's all perfect. And there's a story, you might have heard it, but I don't know where it was, but it was Shiv Ram Swami. He was coming to town, and they were getting ready for him, the usual chaos, getting ready for the guru to come. And he came early and caught, hours before, he caught this chaos, and he just looked around it, came in, and then he said, "This is not the ISKCON I want to be part of," and he just left, and he didn't come back. Because he came early, and saw what it's really like before. um, and I think a lot of them would do that if they knew what it was like. Because then, as soon as they leave, it's back to the same, arguing and politics. And the
Oh,
guru just thinks it's, oh, they're doing so well there, like it's really weird.
yeah, yeah. Do you want to let's read Gita this week?
Yeah, we usually be geared. Let me just check on my Facebook, see if there's any comments. 'Cause last time there were a lot. Or should we do that at the end?
Yeah, no, we could check to see, and then I'd like to get a little bit of Gita in though this week.
Yeah, last week we were going on and on too much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's no comments this week. Last week there were like 50, and I wasn't looking. Now there's like none. But all right, fine. fine. I won't share it anymore. The devout community doesn't appreciate me.
That's right. You guys don't appreciate us.
I'm gonna get the Gita.
I'm gonna get the Gita.
I'm gonna get the Gita. Okay. Were we reading it in order?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah, let's keep going in order. So I've got us at chapter 1, verse 7.
That's great, because I just completely closed the book.
So
cool.
I can start and
okay.
embarrass myself with some Sanskrit here.
Sure.
All right. Ashmakam tu vishvishtayi tan nibodaha dijotama nayaka mama sanyasaya samjanartam tan bravimite. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military forces.
Ooh. Text 8. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Simitim Jaya Ashvatama Vikarnascha Samaudittatis Tatevacha. Translation. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvatama, Vikarna, and the son of Samadatta called Burishrawa, who are always victorious in battle. Purport. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are very victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana. Ashvatthama is the son of Dronacharya, and Somadati, or Burishrawa, is the son of the king of Balikas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya.
All right, text 9. Anicha bahava sura madati tayakta jivataha nana shastra praharanaha sarve yuda vishvaradaha. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake, all of them well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all experienced in military science. Purport. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Kritavarma, and Salya, are all determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Oh, did I lose you, man? I think Jake froze. Sorry, I got a loud thing out here, but it looks like Jake froze up here. Let me see if we can get him back. Or I'll just keep going, I guess. Until he comes back, he'll come back. All right, text 10. Aparaya aptam tad ashmakam balam bhishma birakishitam parampatam tva idam etisham balam biham birakashitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Purport. Herein, an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. In text 11. Ayanishu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avashtita Bhishmam iva birakshantu bhavanta sarve ivahi. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they have been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus, I think Jake's back. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes did not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjun's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances.
Hi, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're on text 12.
Yes, my device overheated. It's so hot here that my device just overheated and said, no, can't do it anymore.
No, shut it down.
Yeah. Shall I read text 12 then?
Yeah.
Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuruvita patimaha simanadam vinadyochai sankam dadmao pratapavan. Translation. Then Bhishma, the great valiant, I love the word grandsire. I put that in a new rap actually, but it's just a good word. The great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Sorry. Oh, here's the word again. Purport. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhana. And out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him up by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed the depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection.
Tata sankyascha birascha panavanaka gomukaha sahasheva bahanyanta sha sabadas tumulo bahavat. After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous.
Oh. Tata svete hayer yukte mahati syandane stitao madhava pandavas cheva divya shankar pradap matu. I feel like I chickened out of some of those words, or I just kind of was like, nah, and I made them up. You know, I
That's
used
like,
to do that in some of the songs that I didn't know for a long time. I didn't know no Shema prayers, and honestly, sometimes I'm not sure if I still do, but but I was like for some reason avoiding learning that, and like I used to sometimes just be like Kama Lama Vama Nama Ne Mama, just completely making up, just but like singing out like I knew because I knew about what it was, but I didn't know the exact words.
That's funny. I used to do that in church when I went to church.
Yeah.
Like, hell yeah, like, yeah, oh, I don't know what they're saying.
And then you find a bit that you know, you're like, Nanita Hiranya Kashipu.
Oh yeah. But that's like when they're doing at the end, and they're like, ki
Yeah,
jai.
how do you learn how to do that? Do you just make it up or what? Because I don't know. I've never done that before, and I don't know how they know what to say in that bit.
Yeah. Right at the end, I know. They're like, they're ki jai, and then like I remember at first, and then again, you're just waiting for everyone else, and then they're like jai, and you're like jai, jai.
He could be saying anything. He could be like, "Do you all want to go?" Like, he could just be saying anything stupid. You're like, "Jai, yeah, I want that."
Jai.
I also, it's a stupid joke that I have, but whenever they say key, I keep thinking like someone's lost their keys, So they're always like, so and so key, and it's like, Jai. Like I always think they've lost their keys, but it's only funny to me, I think. So, oh yeah, shall I read this last one then?
Yeah, let's read this last one, and we gotta wrap it up.
On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yesham Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu, or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated had been donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds.
It's actually kind of like, like it's cool because I like hearing stuff like that, like about, the fire god and stuff. But I was thinking like, yeah, it's like if you don't read this with somebody else,
Yeah,
and like if you're just coming for the first time and reading this and none of that, it all just seems mythology, right? It just seems like I was like, oh yeah, I read about this in Greek mythology class.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
People like this actually a personality, like is real.
Yeah, that's right. But again, without like, kind of without understanding or diving a bit deeper, to me it'd be like, oh yeah, I read about that in Greek mythology. We did we did the fire gods and the different gods of Greek mythology as well, right? So
yeah.
Anyways, all right, cool. That was good. I have a call. I gotta be on here in a few minutes. I gotta jump off. But interesting conversation. My takeaway was no spiritual bypass. Do your work.
Yes.
Take personal responsibility, because ultimately, I don't think it's like that it's necessarily any other person's job to like. I think we all have to just be personally responsible for our own journey and figure out like, associate with those that make sense for us and basically just take responsibility. But if you don't spiritually bypass, I think that ultimately you'll get to better and better places.
I mean, at the same time, we can't do it all ourselves. So of course we need to advance to associate with people more advanced and surrender to people more advanced than us and gurus and such. But if there's a mix, you can't just jump over your responsibility by surrendering everything. But at the same time, you can't like do it all yourself. So it's about sincerely inquiring, accepting where you're at, and sincerely inquiring on how to to advance working on the things you need to work on, with as much honesty as you can, really.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a wrap.
That's a Krishna rap.
That's a Krishna rap. This is a Krishna rap too. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Yeah,
time,
thanks,
same
guys.
place. Leave a comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and we'll go from there. Haribol, spirit.
Haribol, y'all.